Hi everyone, Steve here.
Today I'm joined by Andy.
Good to have you.
Thank you for the invitation, Steve Healey. It's good to see you again.
Hi everyone, Steve here from RSM, and welcome to our first coffee conversation for 2022. Today I'm joined by David Hobart. Welcome, David.
Steve.
David is the Chief Investment Officer of Monochrome Asset Management. So David, as we had a bit of a chat earlier, this is all about having a chat over a coffee. So what's your drink of choice? What's your coffee?
Well, a strong one, Steve. Yeah. So this is just a double shot flat white. Small.
First one of the day as well, I'm guessing. Yeah.
No, it's my second strong one. Second strong one. Yeah, but I'll only have two.
Yeah, similarly, this is my second as well. First one was 2 shots though. This is just the 1 shot. So, but look, really good that you could join us for a bit of a chat. Maybe before we sort of get into things, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, who is David Hobart?
Well, that's I guess it's not a trick question, but no, I've been in Gold Coast and Brisbane based most of my life. Had 10 years in Sydney, but have a couple of grown kids and a lovely wife, and I've been in the trading and investment game for 25 odd years. Used to run a hedge fund and got quite interested in digital assets back in around 2015, and just out of as a macro curiosity, and one thing led to another, and here we are at Monochrome.
Awesome. No, living the dream. So that's a good segue in terms of tell us about Monochrome. You know, what is your, I guess, the history and where you see things going into the future as well, and where you are right now.
So Monochrome Asset Management is a digital asset manager here based in Brisbane, and basically, like personally, I've been involved in Bitcoin and digital assets since 2015, and along that journey, you just see that so much misinformation and so much risk is in the space. And so Monochrome was really built around this idea of how do you provide a safe pair of hands to start with in a space that's fraught with misinformation, and also risk of defrauding and all that sort of business. So Monochrome's really here for the advice community to help educate advisors and their clients about giving them some truth, if you like, or some objectivity around the space. So that's kind of what we're about, building institutional grade products so that people can access digital assets safely.
That's fascinating. Is the and I've got to say, I'm probably the first to say I don't really understand digital assets, other than having invested in a few of them and have some of that just at the moment, and the volatility is quite extraordinary. And I think a lot of people, probably like me, novice investors, don't really know what they're investing in. So is the landscape quite competitive in terms of businesses like yourself that are focusing on digital assets?
Well, it's fairly nascent asset class. It's okay. Bitcoin's been around for 13 years, but you certainly wouldn't have built a institutional grade funds management business. There's not too many of them in the world, and obviously that's what we're endeavouring to build here in Australia. There are lots of managers trying to generate what we'd call alpha, so trying to bring skill and to the marketplace, but a lot of those alpha strategies are still pretty much untested and untried. Like, there's not enough performance history because some of these assets, are here one day and they're not here the next. Whereas Bitcoin is a sort of the staple, if you like, inside the digital asset ecosystem, has got a tested protocol. It's been battle tested. It's been around for 12, 13 years, and now it's being recognised by regulators as investable. So ASIC, for example, has determined that only 2 digital assets within the ecosystem are actually able to be turned into ETPs or ETFs on the ASX, so that being Bitcoin and Ethereum, whereas all the rest of the ecosystem is still, it's a bit of the Wild West. So there are some other managers entering the space, but our view is, how do we help the advice community to better understand and better educate their clients, because they're getting a lot of inbound inquiry from their clients, And because there's been so much noise in the media and so much volatility in the markets, which at times translates into opportunity, but it also translates into risk.
Sure.
So we're really taking our time with this and wanting to develop deep and lasting relationships with the advice community, so that they're just better equipped to handle inbound inquiry from their clients.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Very, very interesting. Tell me in terms of, because again, one thing I've probably observed personally and is over the last couple of years, the COVID years, and of course we're still well and truly in them. Who would have thought that 2 years ago that we'd be still there, 2 years on. And it's the impact of that across the whole economy has been, well, unpredictable at best. In terms of that kind of digital space, the digital asset space, again, you've kind of seen that volatility over that period. But tell me about what sort of challenges have you encountered, and it may be personal, it might be within the business as well, but what challenges have you encountered over the last couple of years during the course of the pandemic, which of course continues? So.
Yeah, sure. Well, interestingly, in traditional assets, or in the traditional funds management space, in traditional assets, the businesses that have performed best, not in terms of investment returns, but in terms of fortressing their businesses and growing assets, if you like, within their businesses, have been those with existing relationships, because it's been much harder. So the bigger incumbents have done better because they've got long-standing relationships, so they don't have to go out and meet new people in a world which is sort of closed in. It's much harder to forge new relationships over Zoom than it is to meet people face to face. So it's been the big incumbents that have done quite well through the pandemic in the funds management space. So starting a new business, in a funds management business, in the middle of a pandemic obviously creates its challenges. But interestingly, digital assets as an ecosystem has benefited, obviously, from the pandemic. More people are indoors, more people are looking for other ways to supplement their income. These markets are moving, there's interesting opportunities, VC opportunities, lots of things going on in the space. So it's expanded as the world becomes more digital or digitally oriented. So there's a kind of, at a business level, challenge, but at the same time it flips open the opportunity because more eyeballs are engaged in and interested in what digital assets mean and what they mean to them.
Yeah, which is precisely where I was leading next, in terms of, we have our fair share of challenges, but generally speaking, every cloud has a silver lining. Yeah, sure. And certainly in our business, we've certainly seen our fair share of opportunities that have arisen as well. And I'm guessing, well, you've just sort of touched on that in terms of the opportunities that have arisen during the pandemic as well.
Yeah, I think the nature of works, as we all know, has shifted. The nature of, not so much the nature of work, but the nature of how we attend or deliver our work has changed. And there's lots of talk about things like the metaverse and like bringing, how do we better engage community or our workplace? How do we build culture? How do we do all of that through a digital kind of landscape? And that's accelerating this notion around the metaverse. At the fringes, you've got, Facebook is a simple example, or Meta as they're calling themselves now. How do they bring virtual reality tech into the workplace such that you can sit in a boardroom meeting while you're in your lounge room or home office and communicate with people around you as if they're in the same room? That all of that has been accelerated. All of that is changing as a consequence of the pandemic. Now, you could argue for good or for bad. Yeah. I'm not here to argue that. I'm just observing trends as they unfold.
Yeah. So it's very much been, an acceleration of change, hasn't it? In many, many facets.
Yeah. And I think it's a fascinating time. Yeah. It's a fascinating time. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the world. You can be frightened by it, by turning on the 6 o'clock news. But the flip side of that fear, again, it's like markets. When the markets are fearful, that's when you should be buying, as opposed to getting completely caught up in that fear.
Yeah, absolutely. David, fascinating stuff, and thank you so much for sharing your story. Thanks everyone for joining us for our first conversation of 2022. Appreciate you dialing in, and thanks again, David. A pleasure to have a conversation.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks again, everyone out there, and look forward to seeing you next time.